The London Marathon begins here on BBC One this morning at 8:50, introduced by Sue Barker. This is BBC One. Time now for Breakfast with Frost.
Hello, good morning and welcome to Breakfast with Frost. Bright and early this morning. Margaret Thatcher confides to a Sunday paper this morning that she thinks Major has got it wrong. But only on this point, the length of the campaign, and the chicken. But she says that most voters will be bored rigid by polling day. Meanwhile, here's an update on the news.
Good morning again. Security is tight in the Bosnian capital Sarajevo as the Pope prepares to celebrate an open-air mass in the city's main football stadium. Tens of thousands of pilgrims have gathered to hear his message of peace and reconciliation. This morning the Pope met the three members of Bosnia's collective presidency. Before departing for Rome, he'll hold talks with the leaders of all of Bosnia's religious communities. The London Marathon gets underway in about 10 minutes' time. 500,000 spectators are expected to turn out to watch the 27,000 runners along the 26-mile course. The police have warned people to be on their guard after last week's IRA bomb alert at Aintree. And the weather, it will be more cloudy today with the best sunshine in the southwest. There'll be drizzle in the far north. And finally, a reminder that today's lunchtime news is at 12:35 on BBC Two. David.
Style Challenge begins in 55 minutes here on BBC One. Before that, this morning's election call, introduced by Peter Sissons.
Good morning, welcome to the last election call of this campaign on BBC One, Radio 4 and the BBC election website. Taking your calls today is the Prime Minister, John Major. Mr Major has either only another 48 hours or so left in office, or he will be re-elected to lead the Conservatives' fifth successive term in government. So at this crossroads for John Major and for the political life of the country, ring the election call team on 0345 514 614. That's 0345 514 614 with your comments or questions about Mr Major's record and campaign promises. The lines, as usual, are open to just before 10. Our first caller is on the line. He's Peter Lacey from Eastbourne. Your election call, Mr Lacey.
Since Nigel Lawson created the inflationary situation in the late 80s, followed by economic recession in Britain well before the rest of Europe, and the ERM fiasco in the 90s, the personal effects on me were as follows.
The 1 o'clock news now on BBC One with Edward Sturton.
John Major says tomorrow will be Britain's day of destiny and the election is still there to be won. Good afternoon. Tony Blair says he will strive for every single vote in every corner of the country. The other headlines: loyalist prisoners at the Maze have just ended their rooftop protest. The UN is preparing to airlift Rwandan refugees out of Zaire. And a world-class athlete not yet in her teens. The party leaders have all been trying to cast the choice facing the voters tomorrow in their own terms. John Major said it would decide whether Britain enters the next century as a strong, prosperous nation. Tony Blair said a vote for Labour would be a vote for a better Britain, and Paddy Ashdown said only a strong Liberal Democrat contingent could deliver a parliament of conscience and reform. Our political correspondent, Hugh Edwards, is in our election studio.
Edward, a few more signals today that the parties know more or less what's ahead of them, though they're all unsettled by these reports that unusually high numbers of voters have yet to make up their minds. Another factor for the campaign managers is that many of those voters who've declared an allegiance might yet change their minds. Labour's convinced it's hit a purple patch just at the right time. The party's campaign colour is now an imperial shade of purple, no sign of the old socialist red, except, that is, of course, for the rose itself. party symbol is just about the only campaign prop that hasn't been resprayed. An early morning news conference saw Mr. Blair insisting once again that he was taking nothing for granted after 6 weeks of campaigning. And while his critics accuse him of taking Labour closer and closer to the Tories, Mr. Blair insists that the choice for the voters has in fact never been clearer.
Between now and when the polls close tomorrow, we will strive for every vote in every single corner of the country. This election is not going to be decided by opinion polls. It's not going to be resolved by pundits. It is in the hands of the British people. Their future is in their hands. And today I ask them for their trust.
What do you think has changed during the 6 months of this 6 weeks of this campaign? 6 years of this campaign? What do you think anything has actually changed in terms of the mood of the electorate and votes shifting, or have you just basically held on to what you started with?
The Conservatives had the chance in this campaign to explain some vision of the future for this country, and they've been wholly unable to do so. By contrast, I think that in the election campaign, we have managed to go out and say to people, look, these are the things that we can do.
On schools, health and crime, Mr. Blair said he would be held personally responsible for delivering Labour's contract with the people. And there was a hint, no more than that, of Labour's mood a day before polling.
Can I ask you what your thoughts will be tomorrow night at 10 when the polls close and you will look forward to the results?
Well, I shall be, as you say, looking forward to the results, I think. That's the,
will there be a sense of anticipation?
I think it would be odd if there wasn't the mildest sense of anticipation, yes. I think that's... I think that would not be overstating it, and I mean, I don't want to be overbold, but I think I could agree with that.
Perhaps it's
BBC Two. The votes will be cast tomorrow, but there's still questions to be asked today. We join Nick Ross now on BBC Two with Diana Medill for the Campaign Roadshow.
Good afternoon. Well, how was it for you? It's all over, bar the voting. What did you make of it? Was it fun, as John Major opined at the start of this long campaign it ought to be? Was it tedious, or have you been irritated by what's been going on? Gathered here at King's College London are first-time voters. People who were here earlier on in the campaign told us what they thought then and what questions they had then. Here too are some of the politicians who hope to persuade them to vote for them, or at least for their parties. And we'll see how much things have changed, if at all, during the course of the campaign. Meanwhile, about half a mile up the road, or more precisely half a mile up the river, at Westminster, in our Westminster newsroom, who's been hearing from the main parties as they've been making their last national pitch to the electorate today, here's Diana Medill.
Good afternoon. Well, yes, the parties did use their last press conferences before the election to make ritual pitches to the voters, and there was some talk about policies, but most of all, there was a distinctly demob happy feel about them. Gordon Brown even managed to make his party's decision to start the ball rolling early today, 7:15 in fact, sound like an achievement.
As a sign of our commitment to get a flying start today, you will no doubt be thanking us for breaking another record at the end of this longest campaign with one of the earliest press conferences. Thank you.
Parliament, and as Simon Hughes says, don't forget to vote. Good afternoon.
Take a long, hard look at these men. One of them is responsible for more serious crimes than you can possibly imagine. Since 1925, he's shot countless people and killed off dozens more in bizarre and sinister ways. And he's got away with it every single time. Alfred Hitchcock. The classic lineup continues Saturday with the 39 Steps, 12:45 on BBC Two.
The latest from the World Snooker Championship in 5 minutes. First on BBC Two, the news with Andrew Harvey.
Good
afternoon. The political leaders have been making their final appeals to voters before Election Day. John Major said the Conservatives had created an economic miracle which was too good to give up. Tony Blair said the election was not in the bag despite Labour's lead in the opinion polls. And Paddy Ashdown said the Liberal Democrats were on the point of the biggest breakthrough of any third party since the war.
John Major made a final plea to the electorate today not to jeopardise what he claimed as the achievements of 18 years of Tory government.
Low inflation, too good to give up. Low mortgages, too good to give up. Falling unemployment, too good to give up. Our economic success, too good to give up. Our United Kingdom, too good to give up.
Tony Blair in Dumfries this morning at least pretends to agree with John Major on one thing, that the result isn't sewn up yet. He's been urging his supporters all day to avoid complacency.
It doesn't matter what the pundits say. It doesn't matter even that the Tories have given up on this election. We won't give up until every vote, every piece of support is secured for change in Britain today.
Paddy Ashdown, on a lightning helicopter tour today, claims to have travelled further than either of the other two leaders in the campaign. He's ending it on an upbeat note.
Mike said you've got a great chance of winning here. A load of rubbish. You're going to win here. There's no doubt about it. That's why I'm here today, is because you're going to win in this seat tomorrow.
Okay. John Major was at Wembley today, still hoping he'll be the winner tomorrow night. He may have the consolation of a victory for Chelsea, the team he supports, in the FA Cup later in May, even if his own fixture tomorrow ends in disappointment.
Loyalist inmates at the Maze prison near Belfast have ended their rooftop protest, but they're still in control of 2 H blocks. The unrest began after tough new security measures were introduced following the discovery of an IRA escape tunnel. Talks between the Loyalist Ulster Democratic Party and the Northern Ireland office are understood to have broken down. A French Navy ship with 22 people on board has exploded and sunk, killing at least 1 person. The vessel was 6 miles off the Normandy coast when the accident happened. A search is underway for 4 missing crew members. It's thought the ship was on an exercise using explosives, some of which may have gone off accidentally. The American envoy in Zaire says he still hopes that talks will go ahead to try to end the civil war there, even though there's been a last-minute dispute about the venue for the planned meeting between President Mobutu and the rebel leader Laurent Kabila. The envoy, Bill Richardson, was in Kisangani this morning as the operation to repatriate Rwandans from refugee camps got underway. And that's all for now. Next news is the 6 o'clock news over on BBC One.
Good afternoon. The British Medical Association is calling for a Harrogate company to withdraw an alcoholic milkshake from sale. It says the product, called Supermilk, is a deliberate attempt to target underage drinkers. But the company, ICB, denies the fruit and chocolate drinks are aimed at under-18s. Police in Doncaster are hunting for what they're calling a callous motorcyclist who ran over a 5-year-old girl, dragged her under his bike and then rode off. It happened as the girl walked home from school in Sprotbury yesterday afternoon. She's being treated in hospital for serious cuts and bruises. Police are continuing to question 4 people about the killing of the Sheffield postman David Hurd. A 17-year-old youth has been charged with his murder. Mr. Hurd was run over by his own postal van in Woodseats 3.5 years ago. And that's it from us for now. Join us again at 6:30 when I'll be back for Look North, but now it's time for the weather with David Lee. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, a very warm afternoon across many parts of the country today. 20 Celsius in inland parts of the Midlands. Also across Northern Ireland, 19 Celsius, and eastern Scotland, that's up to 66 degrees Fahrenheit. Some thicker cloud, though, to the northwest of Scotland, giving some drizzle, and also a little bit of low cloud now, coming to the far western part of Wales. A few thin patches also on the north coast of Cornwall and northwest Devon. Overnight tonight, a little bit of mist forming inland, but not as cold as last night. The lowest temperatures probably about 6 or 7 degrees. So any early mist inland going very quickly. Perhaps some low cloud persisting around these western and southwestern coasts, and still some cloud in the far north of Scotland, but for most places dry with a good deal of sunshine. If anything, slightly warmer today. Inland areas could be as high as 23 Celsius. Bye for now.